Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Today's program is proudly brought to you by Whole Foods Market. Visit WholeFoodsMarket.com or download the Whole Foods Market app to learn more and find the store nearest to you.
Food and travel. They go hand in hand. And chances are, if you're a fan of Heritage Radio Network, you love them both. Between April 10th and 24th, we have 6 incredible food and travel experiences up for auction at CharityBuzz.com. Go on an underground food tour of New Orleans with a rocket scientist. Get your hands on VIP passes to Feast Portland, or enjoy a ranch-to-table experience in wine country. 4 of the experiences include hotel stays at some of the most iconic properties across the country, including the newly reopened Hotel Claremont in Atlanta. Now's your chance to win the ultimate Bourbon and Beyond weekend in Lexington, or take in a Latin food tour of New York's outer boroughs. You'll eat, drink, explore, and relax, all while supporting Heritage Radio Network. Help us keep the lights on and the mics hot. Go to heritageradionetwork.org/auction and bid now.
Hello, and welcome to A Hungry Society. I'm Portia Wilson, and this is the show where we talk about food, food media, and so much more. Today's guest is Eric Himmelfarb. Sorry, Eric. Manager of Food Sourcing, Procurement, and Logistics at City Harvest, a food rescue organization here in New York City. City Harvest will rescue 59 million pounds of food this year and deliver it to hundreds of community food programs around New York City. He has also worked as an adjunct professor in the NYU Food Studies Department, where he teaches food and the arts, the Poetic Voice. He received his MA in Food Studies from NYU and currently resides in Brooklyn. Eric, welcome to A Hungry Society.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And we have to give a special shout out to your colleague, Max.
Max Hoffman is in the house as well.
Yes.
Hello, everybody.
You have to come a little closer.
Sorry. Hello. No, it's great to be here. I'm very excited to be here chatting with you, and it's cool to watch people having lunch here as well.
Right.
Here at
so
Roberta's.
Here in the studio, we are looking directly out onto the dining room of Roberta's. So we have a captive audience. So this show I'm really excited about. This is a little different for A Hungry Society because we talk a lot about dining and going out to restaurants, and City Harvest does some really important work when it comes to food insecurity in New York City. And that term, food insecure, can you kind of explain that a little bit for listeners?
Sure. So the official definition of food insecurity is the lack of access at times to enough nutritionally adequate food for an active, healthy life for all members of a household. To put it more simply, this means that instead of asking, or a family that is food insecure, instead of asking what is it that we're going to have for dinner tonight, they may be asking themselves at some time during the year, will we have dinner? Will we have enough money to cover our food needs? So that's kind of that's what a family would be facing that is food insecure.
And I was looking at facts for that, and it's 1.3 million
Yes, so
New Yorkers.
Nearly 1.3 million New Yorkers face food insecurity this year. About 1 in 5 children also face food insecurity. And so it's just under 15% of the New York City population. And just for some perspective, the entire city of Dallas has about 1.3 million people.
Wow.
So it's a very large scale of need in New York City. Yeah.
And your work at City Harvest and the organization in general helps to address that. Can you talk a little bit about what the organization does?
Sure. So it's our mission to end hunger in communities around New York City through food rescue and distribution, through education, and through other practical and innovative solutions. The main thing we're doing is we're rescuing food that would otherwise go to waste. This year it's 59 million pounds, as you said, and it's being delivered free of charge to about 500 community food programs around the city that then feed folks who are looking for food, folks who may be food insecure. Mm-hmm. So it's that rescued food that then goes to the agencies that then feeds hungry New Yorkers.
And then your role in particular, you work in procurement.
Yes.
And 500 different organizations in New York, that's a lot of logistics.
Exactly. And so Max and I both work on the food procurement team. And there's actually two sides to food sourcing, broadly speaking, at City Harvest. On one side, we have a team that works only with donors who are local in New York City. And I should point out that all the food we get is being delivered within the 5 boroughs. So there's one team that works with donors who are donating food in the 5 boroughs. Max and I are on the team that works to steward and solicit donations outside the 5 boroughs of New York City and bring that food typically into our warehouse in Long Island City to then get allocated out to those 500 community food programs around the city.
Wow, that's amazing. How did you come to City Harvest?
So I grew up in New York City, so I was very familiar with the trucks and the green logo, and it's kind of a New York City institution at this point. But I was in grad school at NYU studying food studies, and I knew I wanted to get into nonprofit anti-hunger work. And I actually started at City Harvest in fundraising, and once I got into fundraising, the more I learned about what City Harvest was doing, I eventually wanted to make the switch over to food sourcing to be a little bit closer to the core of the work. Mm-hmm. But basically, a couple years before even getting to City Harvest, I kind of had my eye on them and wanted to be in that world. Fighting hunger, helping with food insecurity, food justice. Mm-hmm. That was always kind of my goal.
Yeah, all those things are really interconnected.
Yes.
Food justice, food insecurities. In your work, the families that you work with, can you talk a little bit about like the challenges that you see them face?
Sure. So there's a perception, I think, that folks who are hungry are homeless or unemployed, and certainly folks who are homeless or unemployed may be facing hunger, likely are facing hunger. But many of the people we serve are also working families, bringing in a paycheck, but not making quite enough money to cover all their costs. The cost of living in New York City is pretty high. There are a lot of fixed costs: healthcare, childcare, rent, transportation. Food often comes at the end of that and is a little more. There's more, maybe some room to cut and room to trim, and so folks who are food insecure may be forced to make trade-offs. Parents may cut back on the food they're eating so that their kids can eat. So these are questions and trade-offs that folks are making every day, living in this pretty expensive city.
Yeah, we were talking a little earlier, like before the show, about New York City has so many extremes. Like you have some of the wealthiest people in the country live in the city or have homes in the city, and then you have families who are struggling, working 1 or 2 jobs to make ends meet. And so City Harvest is like so important because it kind of helps fill in those gaps that happen.
And we're lucky enough to have a great kind of array of donors, financial donors within the city who recognize those disparities and want to help us address them through food rescue and distribution. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you talk about what a typical day at City Harvest looks like for you?
So for us and for our entire team, a typical day would involve being on the phone most of the day with potential donors. We're either reaching out, trying to procure loads, or we're getting offers. A lot of what we do is work through the Feeding America network, especially what Max and I work on. And just to take a step back, City Harvest is one of 200 member food banks in the Feeding America network. And each big city essentially has its own kind of Feeding America affiliate. And so a lot of what we're doing is we're on the phone with other Feeding America affiliate food banks who may have excess food to pass along to us. Feeding America also provides us with a way to kind of connect to excess food that manufacturers have across the country. So a lot of what we're doing is working through various channels to procure the food we need, that our programs need for this week and for this month, and for the year.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the kind of like foods that you get in? Like, what are you sending to locations all over New York?
So it's important to point out 53% of that 59 million pounds that we're bringing in will be produce, will be fresh produce. And that's a big emphasis for us, because communities that are food insecure tend to have low access to healthy food, not to mention affordable food. And so it's a priority of ours to get produce. So what was the question again?
The kinds of foods that you get in.
Right, so we're focused on produce, and I can talk about the breakdown a little bit. So we're getting packaged food, we're getting bakery food, we're getting dairy, prepared food. A small percentage of what we get is meat, but we are focused on produce. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it's coming through produce brokers, who are third parties that represent farms that have excess, who connect that excess to a food bank like City Harvest. In some cases, it's coming from a local donor like Fresh Direct or Blue Apron. We have a handful of direct farm relationships. There's one called America's Grow Row in New Jersey that we've been working with. They're a nonprofit in their own right, and they grow food to donate to Community Food Bank of New Jersey in addition to City Harvest. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what we're doing is actually bringing in produce from those different channels to make up more than half of our pounds.
That's so important. What you were talking about, the lack of access to produce in particular, because when we talk about things like food justice or food deserts, a term that people often use, it's not that there isn't anything to eat, it's just the quality of things that are available and the access to fresh fruits and vegetables and produce that's available.
That's the misconception about the food desert term. I think it's misused. It's often misused, especially in New York City. What we see more often, I think, are neighborhoods that have increased access to unhealthy food. If there is healthy food at all, it's probably out of reach financially. But there is food, it's just not necessarily the nutritious kind of food that folks are looking for and need to live a healthier lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so a lot of what City Harvest is focused on is bringing that kind of nutrient-dense food into communities that are lacking it right now. Mm-hmm. In some cases, supermarkets have gone out of business. In other cases, there's just a kind of an abundance of unhealthy food. Yeah.
And 59 million pounds of it.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
And we actually just started a new strategic plan this year, a few months ago. And by 2022, we're going to look to rescue and deliver 80 million pounds of food per year. So we're, to meet the need, and the need is still high. It's actually higher than it was before the recession in 2008. It's gone down in the last couple of years, but it's still higher than it was then. So to meet that need, we do need to increase the pounds we rescue and deliver.
Wow. Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, you also have combined food and poetry. It actually on this network before you've been on, and you read this like epic poem that's 20 pages long called Harvest.
Right, an epic in the true sense of the term, meaning a long poem, not the way the kids are using it.
Right.
That word, at least.
Not epic, extreme,
no,
exclamation point.
A long poem.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you've combined food and poetry?
So this was this was always a personal passion of mine. I've been interested in poetry for my entire life. I was an English major in undergrad. I was really interested in poetry and literature before I ever had kind of opened up my eyes to the food world. And once I got interested in food, I wanted to find a way to somehow have those two passions intersect. And so the writing of my master's thesis at NYU gave me the opportunity to finally bring my two passions together. So food justice, food issues, and poetry. Mm-hmm. And I used that opportunity to write a very long poem about the food system and my experience in it to that point. And after that, I was lucky enough to be able, or I pitched a class to NYU, to the same department I had gotten my master's in, and was lucky enough to have the opportunity to write a syllabus, create a class, teach that class, and sort of bring that intersection of passions to life.
Why do you think poetry is well suited to talk about these things?
So I think there's a lot. Well, I could talk to you for an entire semester about that.
Right.
But
yeah, distill an entire course into one sentence. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, one thing that's interesting to point out is this connection of food and poetry. I thought I had stumbled on something entirely new. It's actually a really old connection. You can go back to, there's an ancient Greek poet named Hesiod who was he basically wrote an epic poem that was a farmer's manual in 700 BC. So this is not a new connection. It's just something that, my sense is that that connection's been lost a little bit. And I think basically the class looks to raise awareness about food issues through poetry, because I think, at least I have a sense that there's something unique about poetry in the way that it can help people make connections and become aware of issues. And, in a food system predicated on fragmentation in a lot of cases and disconnection, poetry's core function is to connect through metaphor, through simile. And so it's uniquely suited to addressing some of the issues I think we see in food. A lot of eaters are disconnected from the effects of their food choices. They're disconnected from the way farm workers are treated, the way restaurant workers are treated. There's a certain disconnect there, certain fragmentation, and poetry can, I think, sort of illuminate and create connections that people didn't see before.
I really like that. Like, you use the term of the food world is fragmented at times, and that's like the perfect way to say it, because it does feel like these different moving parts, but it's all one big system that we're all a part of.
Exactly. And think about the fragmentation in the dining scene. I mean, you have some really high class, expensive restaurants in New York City. At the same time, you have 1.3 million hungry New Yorkers.
Right.
Think about the people working in the kitchens at those restaurants. There's a certain disconnect across the board. Mm-hmm. And my sense was that poetry was uniquely suited to raising awareness about those issues. And the more I read about it, the more I discovered that I'm far from the first person to want to explore that connection. And it goes back to, biblical prophets. It goes back to Greek poets. It goes back to the ancient Mayans. In their book of creation, it's basically a long poem about the importance of corn to their identity. And so the class looks at across culture, across era, at that connection.
So you actually prepared a poem for today. Can you read it for us?
Sure. I just happen to have a poem with me. I kind of have it here by accident, but I'm going to read it for you.
Okay.
Is this the first time a poem has been read on your show?
It is. It is the first time we've had a poem read.
Well, I'm honored then.
Groundbreaking.
I know Max has read some poetry too, so I know he's excited for this.
You have a poem as well?
No, I've just heard. He's heard some of mine.
I've heard some of it. Okay. And what's the title of this?
So this
poem?
is called A Poetry Field Manual. And this is kind of about, there's a certain thread that I like to follow about the way that a farm or a garden or food can be used kind of as a poetic muse. And so that's where this comes from. A Poetry Field Manual. Should you find yourself adrift, find your way to the farm that used to be a printing press, where the soil is contaminated but you elevate the beds above it, high enough to allow the roots to clutch, where you watch the fog clear over the bay in the late morning, where the hills rise to the east, where in the post-meridian light You drop to your knees in awe of the beans wrapped around the corn and the renewal of the compost. The potential for life you held in your hands when you held a seed all those weeks before in a time that felt like prologue. Where you begin to release control, where you allow yourself to reach your hand out to something larger and wider that animates you as it animates the land beneath you. Should you find yourself adrift in the post-meridian light, be like the sunflower at the edge of the field, near the greenhouse where you started your day while the others slept, and at some imperceptible flash of a moment between the fruit trees and the basil and the seeds of 10,000 years, a new stanza took shape.
Wow, that was gorgeous.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
That's a new poem. First time it's been shared.
Wow. There we go.
So there you go.
Wow, thank
Shared
you
with
so much.
the two of you and I guess the many listeners.
Yes, the many Hungry Society listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Eric Himmelfarb of City Harvest.
Today's program is brought to you by Whole Foods Market. From papayas and samosas to reishi mushrooms, if it's something that sounds delicious, chances are you'll find the freshest, best version of it at Whole Foods Market. They have more than 400 stores across the country, so if you consider pizza its own food group or just can't imagine when avocado toast wasn't a thing, Whole Foods Market has you covered. Visit WholeFoodsMarket.com to find a store near you. Whole Foods Market. Whatever makes you whole.
All right, so we're back with more Hungry Society with Eric Himmelfarb of City Harvest. So the second half of the show, I love to talk to my guests about the role that dining has played in their lives. And you said that you grew up in New York, in Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn?
Well, Manhattan.
Oh, Manhattan.
And then I actually moved out to Tenafly, New Jersey.
Tenafly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just over the George Washington Bridge.
Which is, you said a little bit north of Fort Lee.
Yeah, it's along the Hudson River, kind of even with where Yonkers is.
Yeah. Did you and your family have any dining traditions growing up?
We really didn't have a whole lot. We ate together a lot. We ate out a lot, but it's funny. I've been thinking about this recently. I don't have a lot of real dining traditions from my family, at least from growing up. But one thing that came to mind, like a very clear, vivid dining memory of growing up. So I was on the basketball team in high school, and I just have this sort of vivid memory of coming home around 9 p.m. after games, going to a great restaurant in Tenafly called Tenafly Pizzeria, taking out some chicken parmesan and pasta, and just eating at home after that, after the game.
The whole thing? Like
just our family, my family would just kind of, that's sort of this vivid memory I have of, being exhausted after a game, going to Tenafly Pizza. We call it the TPR. I'm sure I haven't been there in a while, but that's a vivid mememory for me.
I thought you were saying that just you would go by yourself.
Oh, no.
And eat
no, this
all
is
of that by yourself. No judgment here.
That would be cooler.
Yeah.
Especially after a game, I probably could have.
Right.
No, but this was something my parents and I did together. We would take food out from Tenafly Pizza and kind of, eat it back at home. And, after feeling good about the game and,
Were there any other Tenafly restaurants that you would frequent or just the pizzeria?
That's really the only one that stands out. I don't think it's really known as a dining town.
Yeah, that's
unfortunately.
True. That's true.
I could be wrong about that by now, but it's been a long time since I lived there. But
I mean, Fort Lee has some good restaurants, and when you go along the river, there's like a bunch of different like little malls and restaurants taking advantage of the view of like the skyline and stuff.
Yeah. But no, I think my main childhood memory is definitely Tenafly Pizza. Definitely.
So as you got older, did you start going out to eat more?
Definitely. Certainly when I went to college, and then after college when I moved back into New York City. And also, like, I wasn't very aware of food issues until I got out of college. So I I don't know, I wasn't very mindful about what I was eating, although I should point out that my parents always had whole wheat bread in the house. My parents would always give me carrots and peppers and as a snack. Like, there was a certain healthy...
So they were mindful about what you were snacking on?
I think they were, yeah, but I'm sort of ashamed to say it, but there were definitely times we went to McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King, and I would never go there now, but we did go there.
I mean, I feel like for a lot of families, and a lot of times when I have my guests on, they're like, that was a treat, was getting to go to McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King. Yeah. So no shame there.
But yeah, we didn't cook a whole lot when I was growing up, but we would eat together. That was always important, eating together. Mm-hmm. But it might have brought in prepared food or ordered in.
Do you have a favorite restaurant at the moment?
That's a good question. I just went to Noor, an Israeli place on the east side. Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah.
Excellent. We went there for my dad's birthday. It was phenomenal.
Is there anything you can recommend? I haven't been there yet.
Well, the kubane, the challah, they got to get a lot of bread. So
bread.
I would recommend getting at least 2 different breads there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does it come with anything, or is it just the bread?
No, it's just the bread, and it's excellent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
So we talked about kind of the best experience you've had lately. Can you talk about one of the worst dining experiences you've ever had? You don't have to name the place, but you can.
I don't want to name names. I'd rather not name names. But, so actually, since I've started at City Harvest, I've been a lot more aware of food safety issues, because we're very, we're very cognizant of food safety. Anytime we get a call, we're always asking a kind of checklist of questions about whether the food's been stored properly. So now I'm very aware of this when I go out to eat, and unfortunately, I'm not always happy with what I'm seeing. A couple things come to mind. So I went to a sushi restaurant with my now wife when we were first dating, and it was really hot in there. There were flies, and there was a guy behind the sushi counter clipping his nails.
Oh, that is so
like...
Oh, my God.
I didn't feel great about that.
Yeah, that's fair. That
was
really
a few years
fair.
ago. There was one much more... It was more recent. I was upstate at a diner with some friends, and we ordered like this ice cream sundae on top of a Belgian waffle, this really decadent, crazy dessert. And it just so happened that the kitchen door swung open. And right when it swung open, it's like this veil was lifted, and we saw the chef in the back kind of like holding the waffle, almost like a Frisbee or something, like just kind of holding it in his hand. And it made me I couldn't eat the waffle after that.
Yeah, that's for the best. I hope you didn't eat any sushi at that place. Please tell me you left.
I think we actually ate the sushi.
Oh, no.
His face looks like he is.
Yeah.
I still regret it, but I think we did. Because I think it was a place that my wife had been to before she wanted to take me there, would like share her like East Village sushi
spot
pathway with me. Mm. But it wasn't the same.
Yeah, no.
And she kind of gets upset. She feels like I'm very critical now of food safety, almost too critical. And so it's like it takes some of the enjoyment out. She has a point.
Well, I mean, that's fair. That's not like overly critical
right.
If like the chef is cutting their nails.
But now, even at home, I'm very careful not to let the food get into that danger zone if it's been left out too long, and she thinks I'm a little crazy about it, but look, I'm just trying to keep us safe.
Right. Speaking of home, do you have any dining traditions now?
So my wife's actually she's been working a lot on her cooking skills, and so she leads the way, and then I kind of help out, and we do cook a lot more now, and that's something we've been consciously working on. She's great at kind of scouring the internet for interesting recipes, a lot of times vegan recipes. Mm-hmm. But since we moved in together about 3 years ago, we've been cooking more and more at home together. Yeah.
So you live in Brooklyn.
Yes.
You went to school in New York. I feel like you've seen kind of the food scene change over like, let's say a little less than a decade or so. What do you make of today's like dining culture, or in New York City, the dining culture that you've seen?
Well, I think I definitely come at this question from City Harvest perspective, and I'm thinking about, so we have a food council made up of a number of chefs and restaurateurs, and I guess what I see in the dining culture is an awareness of, an awareness beyond the dining room, an awareness of who's in the kitchen, who's growing the food, who's picking it, who's processing it. And of course, chefs are in the business of feeding people, and so is City Harvest. And so what I've seen, certainly working at City Harvest, is how eager the restaurant community is to help with what we're doing and to be big advocates, to be food donors, to help raise awareness. So for me, that's huge. And another thing I was thinking about actually was the whole meal kit phenomenon. It's not restaurant related, but it is dining related, and a lot more people are getting involved in the meal kits. You're seeing a lot of businesses kind of pop up to cater to that, and that presents an opportunity for City Harvest in terms of cultivating new donors, new sources of food donations. So for us, it's a positive because we have a whole new set of donors we didn't have maybe 5 years ago. And it speaks to the way the food system and kind of the food marketplace is changing in New York City.
What's interesting is you kind of touched on the cooking aspect of things and meal kits. I think as we've seen people become more and more interested in food, it's not necessarily just interest in a restaurant or a chef. It's interest in cooking at home, like your wife who wants to try different stuff, and people wanting to order meal kits and try something they've never had before. And food markets like the farmers market in Union Square is huge and massive, and there are all these farmers markets like popping up all over the country because people are interested in food beyond just sitting down at a table.
And I think the meal kit trend speaks to something deeply ingrained in us. When we cook for many of the same reasons, same reasons we kind of go camping or go hiking. There's like a certain element of getting in touch with what it means to be human and getting back to our like primal instincts a little bit. So I think the meal kit trend is a good one because it's allowing people to inch their way back towards kind of what it means to be human, to be in touch with those natural processes.
Those connections, like what you were talking about with the poetry thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being part of that system.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, my last question for you, if you could have your last meal in a restaurant, where would it be and who was invited?
So this is a great question. I love this question. Where is tough? I think, honestly, just an unnamed small restaurant on a side street in Rome. I think just like, it doesn't even matter where. Just I want to be there. It's such a great food city. You can't have a bad meal there. So I'll just place us on a side street in Rome. In terms of who's there, so my wife's got to be there. My parents.
And it can be anyone living or dead.
Yeah.
You don't have to know them already.
Anyone who knows me knows at least one person I'm going to name. I think Max could probably even guess it. Who is it?
It's Bob Dylan.
Yes, there you go.
Bob Dylan?
Yeah. So he's there.
That's a good one.
He's there. I would love to talk to a bunch of poets throughout it. So Allen Ginsberg, John Keats, Walt Whitman, I want them there. It'd be an interesting discussion. Barack Obama, hero of mine, and Michelle Obama. I feel like that's a pretty good group right there.
That's a good group,
My parents, my wife, the Obamas. Got some poets. Bob Dylan, he's a poet in his own right.
He is. What are you eating?
I think we're just eating, really good pasta, good salad and pasta, and drinking some good Italian wine.
Yeah, that was going to be my next
simple,
question.
Just a simple Italian low-key meal. But I want a good discussion. I want a good debate.
A good debate, good discussion, and then you'll walk out of the restaurant and just...
And hopefully continue the discussion. I don't want to say goodbye at that point.
Right.
I've been waiting long enough to meet all those people.
Well, it could go until like 5 a.m. and
that
then,
ideally it would. Yeah.
There you go.
It would.
And then you're out of there.
Right. No, but I love that though. I love imagining that. That'd be a great meal. That'd be like the perfect meal for me.
Maybe I just had an idea. Maybe that's your next poem. What is that meal like with all those people?
Right, like philosophically, how do those poets differ?
Mm-hmm. What would they talk about? Would there be a fight?
Maybe.
No, I don't
Maybe
know.
Not.
I'm just... I'm just like spitballing here. Okay, how can listeners get involved in City Harvest? How can they contribute?
Broadly speaking, there's 3 ways. So you can donate food, donate funds, or volunteer. And there's 2 campaigns we're running right now, kind of leading into the summer when, as I mentioned, 1 in 5 children are food insecure. If they're not in school, there may be more challenges that their parents face in making sure they're all fed if they're not getting food at school. So there are 2 campaigns I want to mention. One is at the Feed Our Kids food drive, which is running from Mother's Day to Father's Day, which basically helps provide food for New York City children throughout the summer. And we're collecting non-perishable food donations at schools, organizations, companies, New York City Fire and police departments. There's more information on our website about that. So that's a great way to donate food to help us out. In terms of donating funds, we have a campaign coming up called Skip Lunch, Fight Hunger. We're asking New Yorkers to donate the cost of their lunch to help provide food for kids over the summer. The campaign runs from May 14th to 18th, and we're asking folks to basically start fundraising teams to kind of get their friends involved, get their families involved, get their coworkers involved. The fundraising goal is $1.1 million, and we're hoping to kind of hit that goal that week to help us with that summer food. And it's very easy to start a team. If you want to do it at your workplace or just with your friends, you can go to our website and learn more about that. So donate food, donate funds, and volunteer. We have plenty of volunteer opportunities. If you're a nutrition expert, you can get in touch with us and learn about how to help out with our nutrition education courses. You can volunteer at our mobile markets, distributing produce. Volunteer in our office. There's lots of ways to kind of get involved. Of course, we're always looking just for advocates to kind of talk about what the work we do, raise awareness about food insecurity, and food rescue. And City Harvest has always been about neighbors helping neighbors and New Yorkers helping out fellow New Yorkers. So we're all involved. We're all in this together. Yeah.
Awesome. And you're also City Harvest is having a big 35th anniversary gala soon.
Yes, on April 24th, we're having a gala. It's actually sold out, so we've done pretty well with the ticket sales. It's the launch of our 35th anniversary. We actually just turned 35 in December, and the day after our gala, April 25th, you'll be able to see a big social media campaign around that 35th anniversary and what we've the impact that City Harvest has had over these last 35 years and where we're going from here. So you'll be hearing a lot from us about that anniversary and about what's ahead right after that gala.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
And Max, thank you for
hanging around.
Thank you for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
No, this was great. Thank you, Korsha.
And I can't wait to have you back again.
Yeah, I would love to.
And thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week on A Hungry Society.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.